Snakes in Norse mythology and the art of Seidr. The history of the snake as a spiritual symbol is one of the oldest. In Egyptian culture, it was seen as a symbol of royalty, divinity, protection, and in some cases, immortality. For the Aztec, the serpent was a representation of the Mother Earth herself. In the Ojibwe, a Native American tribe, they saw it as a sign of fertility and new life. The Norse and Germanic tribes had a different view, though. There are many snakes in Norse mythology. Some depicted as the serpent we think of today, and others that were more dragon-like by comparison, each one having their own story, yet also speculated to be all interconnected aspects of one. This isn't uncommon in animistic terms, and for me, it makes sense. For every living species, I believe there is a core pattern that they are all connected to and part of. All snakes, thus, would be a part of this massive snake pattern. Yet as individuals, they would be like a projection of that core pattern. To help you visualize it, think of the large pattern like a spider web, and the smaller ones like the interconnecting points on it. Thus, each their own, yet all interconnected and representative of the whole. There are two snakes in Norse mythology that are important when it comes to the art of Sedir. There is Nidhogger, and he's an interesting character. There are two places he is said to be found. The first is at the bottom of the world tree around the well that leads to Niflheim, also called Helheim, the Norse underworld. This is where he is said to be gnawing at the root of Yggdrasil, trying to bring it down and cause chaos within the realms. The second is in Nastrond, the corpse shore, where Nidhogger tears apart and feeds upon the worst of the worst people, such as murderers. Some tales have equated it to a specific hall in Niflheim, where snakes drip venom from the ceilings and the walls, and Nidhogger sits on top of it. Either and both stories could be true, depending on the perspective, but we'll get there. Then there's the Midgard serpent, or the serpent that is wrapped around the world, holding all within. Jormungandr is probably the most well-known of the serpents due to the story of Ragnarok, the Norse depiction of the end of days. In the story, Jormungandr will release his tail and create chaos upon the earth, things such as earthquakes and tidal waves. It is the opinion of some that Jormungandr represents the main archetype of the serpent, and that all others are a form of him. Again, this could be seen from certain perspectives. In my experience, Jormungandr is the wall around the land of the dead. Nidhogger allows you onto the path to the land, but Jormungandr is the last hurdle before entering. In both of the cases above, the ultimate representation of the snake is that of boundary. The boundary between one world and another. It is a creature that can move between the worlds and be of the worlds, but belong to none of them. There's a really good quote by Dr. Gardelia, senior researcher at the Museum of Denmark, on snakes. They possessed dark underground powers, but they also had a protective role. We could also speculate that snakes have the ability to transform themselves, thus being able to cross boundaries between the living and the dead. They live in different environments on the surface and below the ground, on land and in water. In Sedir, this is an important concept, as the whole practice around Sedir deals with the land of the spirit. Not always the dead, but also not the physical world we live in. The staff, as noted before in a previous video, is a representation of the snake. Both the animal of a Sedona that she can shapeshift into when crossing into the spiritual realm, or the guide that shows the Sedona the way. Thinking upon the actual serpents of the stories, though, and in my own experience, they're more like gatekeepers. They do guide and help along the way, but they guard the places of the dead. Is it protecting the dead from the living, or the living from the dead? That could be a debate in itself. We have very little written information on the actual practices of Seidr in pre-Christian times. Much of what we have today has been constructed from scholarly works, archaeology, anthropology theories, and modern practitioners like myself who have learned through experimentation and connecting to their guides. So in essence, there is no one way of Seidr that someone can claim to be the practice. Instead, it is modern practitioners sharing what they have learned personally, both through study and through their actual practices. Much of paganism and older magical traditions are this way. There are certain things we can all agree upon, such as the tools of Seidr, the seat, the staff, the song, but their specific representations can hold some different perspectives. My knowledge comes from research, listening and talking to other practitioners, instructions and understandings given to me by my guides, and a lot of experimentation to figure out what actually works. For me, the snake is represented in the staff, not something that grounds my physical body and tethers my spirit as it walks. That is the seat in my practice, but the spirit of the snake guiding me as I walk. It is a spirit that guards the boundaries between planes, protecting but also allowing passage between. So how do you see the snake? What does it represent in your practices, your tradition, or your culture? Let me know in the comments below. Let's talk about it.